Hello YouTube, De-bodgery here. So I have purchased a LiitoKala Lii-500S. They're on Amazon for $37, and I thought, hey, you know what, let's check the thing out, see if it's any good, see if it's a steaming turd, whatever. So anyway, I have one in my possession. It's been in my hands for hours now. I've put several 18650s through the thing, just to see that it works, and then I went, okay, now I got to see what's inside the box. So, yep, promptly took it apart. There's the main board out of the thing. I'll show you that in a minute because that's the more complex part of things. So here is the top cover. Let me start with that first. So my favorite thing about this charger is the LCD, which is super readable. Definitely like that. These little touchpad things, which are capacitive, they're okay. I think I like physical buttons better, that click. But whatever, that's a fairly minor gripe. So right here, those two little white squares, that is thermal paste in the ABS plastic because there's a couple of temp sensors that go in there, PTC temp sensors. And then in each one of these slots goes one of these little metal slidey things for connecting to the negative pole of the cells. All right, that black and red wire and that connector, they go down to the backlight for the LCD, and then the LCD is, right in here, and right there is the zebra strip for the LCD. It's just a dumb LCD, and that's the driver for it. It doesn't do anything else. So this little chip right here is a little comparator, and on the back side of those little solder posts and two right here and here are 4 springs that reach up to those 6 spots that are your capacitive touch positions for the 6 buttons, and they all feed back to that little guy. So it's a little comparator chip that basically it probably sits like low when you tap the button, and then it goes high, basically detecting the capacitive value that you create from your finger to the little contact springy on the back side of these things. So then that goes like high to 5 volts or whatever, and then back down to somewhere, basically to this guy here, which is nothing but a TTL buffer chip. To then give logic levels back over to the CPU, which is on the other board. So a little ribbon connector right there for the LCD to main board. That's pretty much everything that's here. Nothing special. The back side of this board is completely not populated with anything other than some springs, of which, I guess right there. So yeah, those two solder posts right there are 2 springs that go down to the piezoelectric tweeter, which sits right there. All right, that's pretty much it for the top cover. Not much to it. Okay, here is the main board, the brains of the operation. So let's start with the simple stuff, and I'll work around to the more complicated things. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to talk about the power supply first because, well, I thought this was pretty cheap. There it is. Okay, so here is the power supply, 12 volts, 3 amps. And this thing, according to the manual, can charge at 2 amps on 2 channels or 4 channels at 1 amp. So that's still 4 amps either way. And this is rated for 3 amps. I don't know who was thinking that one through, but somebody screwed up. Basically cheaped out once again. Yeah, and now I'll talk about the rest of this toy, because that's what this is. This is a toy. And let's start over here. So here's your 12 volts in. You got a very small filter capacitor for the 12 volts in. You have an inductor, another small capacitor for the USB port, providing 5 volts. And then right here you've got a little, charge controller chip, or not charge controller, but switcher rather, for that little DC to DC buck converter that converts 12 volts down to 5 volts. So that's pretty much everything there as far as, so-called power in or power out. These 2 MOSFETs and those 2 MOSFETs, they are 30N06s or 30N06 MOSFETs, and they basically turn on and off DC power to the little buck converters. That's their job. All right, so that capacitor and that electrolytic are all the filtering on this board. 100% of DC ripple filtering is those 2 little dinky caps. So a 100 mic cap and a 220 mic cap. That's everything. And by the way, buck converters are pretty noisy little things. They make a fair bit of ripple. And you'll also notice on here, 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 here. There are 4 unpopulated through-hole sets for filter caps that aren't there. I got this thing this way. I didn't put it that way. It just is. All right. So any 2 channels on this thing are supposed to be able to charge at 2 amps. And then we've got these fiddly little inductors, which are about half the size of the inductors on the XTAR VP4 Plus, which I trust because, well, it has served me super well. Definitely very happy with that thing, with some minor niggling things, which, you know, considering the quality involved with this, I don't mind. They are, you know, the VP4 Plus, the XTAR VP4 Plus is way better than this. So let me talk about a few of those things. So right here, 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 and here are your discharge paths for each one of the cells. So they are 15 ohm non-precision resistors. They are 2 watt resistors, I believe. Whereas like the XTAR VP4 Plus uses precision resistors, and they're also 10 watt resistors. So A, they won't get hot, and B, their resistive value is very, very known. So much higher level of reliability and consistency when discharge testing, so you can get real live capacity of your cells, which you lack here. These are like 5% resistors. So they've got a lot of variability to them, and there's no thermal control in this thing at all. So you don't have any thermal stabilization, so that, you know, as the thing warms up, it continues reading consistently at the same levels, so on and so forth. None of that's here. However, you have it on the XTAR VP4 Plus. All right, so right up here, are 4 MOSFETs, and they feed right into these 4 slider bars, I guess you could call them, that are the negative post on the on each one of the cells, and so there's your positive posts. But anyway, those guys and those resistors are your discharge path, and then of course the voltage drop is measured across each one of those resistors to determine you know, current over time, so you get your amp hours or milliamp hours in this case. All right, you have some diodes right here, which are probably like for reverse protection, or they might be the rectification circuit, you know, or rectification of the output from the 4 DC to DCs. You know, they're buck converters, so they always stay at a slightly higher voltage than the actual cell's voltage, so they can maintain that constant current of, you know, 1 amp or 2 amp or whatever it actually is. I would really be shocked if you actually ever got 2 amps out of this thing, ever, because I find that to be highly unlikely. You've got a few small little MOSFETs on here, there and there, 1 for each channel. Don't know what they do. Probably they are, you know, the drivers for these larger MOSFETs is my guess, but I really don't know. Okay, let's flip this bad boy over. All right, so this, I can't tell what it is because the top of the chip has been scrubbed off, but that's your brains right there. It's probably something like an Atmel 428 kind of a thing. You know, it's got several I/O ports on the thing, some analog to digital converters, you know, some digital inputs and outputs, things like that. But that's your brains of the operation. These are HC4051s, which are, you know, some CMOS TTL type stuff. You know, they're probably, I don't know, AND gates or something, you know, or just buffer chips, you know, and probably like PWM signals coming out of this thing go down to this other stuff for switching the DC to DC on and off rapidly, or switching on and off those little MOSFETs right there rapidly, so that these things don't just turn into thermal nuclear war in about a second, because they're so dinky small and have no stabilization. Okay, so anyway, I should stop ranting, because this is a piece of shit. Okay, truly it is. It was not worth the $37 I paid for it on Amazon, in my opinion. These 4 MOSFETs right here, and those inductors, and those diodes right there, all are part of the DC to DC buck converter circuitry. You know, that's taking the 12 volts in and dropping that down to like the 4.1 volts or so that the type of cells it needs. And by the way, this only works with nickel metal hydride and lithium ion cells. It doesn't work with other types of cells. So keep that in mind if you buy one of these things. And of course, it's, you know, a steaming turd anyway. In my opinion, it's not very good. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's a piece of shit. I don't know what these little guys do, but their gates tie into this guy, and then they come over to these 4 MOSFETs. So I'm going to bet that they are basically buffering between the voltage levels that come out of this thing, like say 3 volts. And by the way, that right there, that is a little 3.3 volt voltage regulator. So I bet that thing runs off of 3 volts, and those guys are basically taking the 12 volt, or it's probably something like that, coming off the board and dropping that down, or rather taking that 12 volts rather, and feeding that to these MOSFETs, all the while letting this thing drive at 3.3 volts, because that's what it's going to be doing. And so those guys get 3.3 volts on their gates, and then source to drain, they have the 12 volts that's going to be driving all this stuff. That's my guess how that works. But that makes sense to me. Anyway, cheap piece of toy, not very good, nowhere near as good as a XTAR VP4 Plus. However, this thing costs $37 versus $75. A huge price jump between these two chargers, but this is not going to be reliable. I don't know this is fact because I haven't tested it yet, but I am pretty damn sure that when I put these cells, and by the way, those are values that I got off the VP4 Plus. Those are discharge values, not charge, because discharge is the thing that matters. I'll bet you anything, when I take these 18650s, which are brand new, and I put them through here, that I will get some other discharge capacity. It won't be what the XTAR provides. It'll be something else. Anyway, my confidence level is exceedingly low because, well, this is crap. I'm highly tempted to try the thing out a little bit and then send it back to Amazon and take that $38 or $37 rather and combine that with 25 more and getting another VP4 Plus, because this is, well, it's crap. Not anywhere near as good. Yeah, it's people that like these things, I'm just scratching my head. I'm guessing you don't know what good is, or you've just never tested to confirm that what you have is actually doing what it says it is doing or not. Well, this is De-bodgery saying, hey folks, I hope your lives are going better. Now that the pandemic is starting to come to a close and there's vaccines out there, people can start getting back to work, things like that. Because, yeah, we've had some tough times. I work in the tech industry, in software development, and my field definitely saw a huge drop in employment levels, over 2020 and early 2021. And it is bouncing back nicely, which is good. But still, there's a lot of people in my field that are unemployed, and I would like to see all those people get jobs again, and the same thing for other fields. So, hey folks, I hope everything's going well for you, finding jobs, getting back into life again. Pandemic is closing down for you, you're getting back to work, your lives are getting better, so on and so forth. Take care, and this is De-bodgery saying, hey, see you around.